going to talk about some Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Rogan was talking about, particularly, it was this case here. Now, the image has nothing to do with it, but I want to bring this up so people know what I'm talking about, and they can possibly look this up themselves. And that is the Sasquatch Sierra Sounds, which is where the whoop came from. Like, if you type up Bigfoot sounds, chances are they're playing this. And what's interesting is that if you listen to it, inside this thing, you can hear the humans talking as well. You can hear the people not only doing that, but also answering it. Like, you can hear the people, like, trying to get it to talk. Like, people whooping back at it. You can also hear people... My favorite one is, well, that's a hard act to follow. Because you hear this one, like, groan and scream, and you clearly hear the guy go, well, that's a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
And Joe Rogan went on a rant, and it was that. It was a rant, listening to these sounds, because he said these sounds are such bullshit. And his rant came down to this. He said, why are the people acting so calm in this? If you were hearing that in the middle of the woods, you would not be calm, which you're correct. If you were hearing this stuff in the middle of the woods, you would not be calm whatsoever.
That is something I've learned from you.
They are so full of shit. This is the fakest thing I've ever heard. What Joe Rogan doesn't talk about is that this is not the first time they're hearing this sound. This is like the 1,000th time this group has gone to the woods and have heard these sounds.
That's crazy.
The first time that they went out into this wood, this group of hunters who had this hunting shack, right? Oh, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
The first people that went out and looked, when they first heard this sound, they were scared shitless. They were. Their description of it is they didn't want to ever go back to this hunting lodge ever again.
And again, if I was in their shoes, I would be in the same
Absolutely.
place. Like, no doubt.
Absolutely. Alrighty? And they heard these sounds. Here's what they said. They described it as they heard these sounds, and they heard these things clearly making whoop noises. And they were in this tent. Or no, it wasn't a tent. It was like a makeshift shelter that they built. And I mean, it was just logs stacked up against a tree.
Yeah.
So that they'd be out of the elements during the night so they can go hunting the next day. I've done that. And all of a sudden they said they heard one call, and then another one call, and then another one call. And they were like talking in a language that they have never heard of before, which you can hear in the recordings. The group leader, he was losing sleep over it, essentially. He was so... He became obsessed with it. He was like, I got to know what the fuck was making those noises. So somehow he convinced his friends to go back out there with him, and I think one of them refused to go.
Yeah.
I think it was all but one. They would go out there, and for the first few times they didn't hear anything. They heard them again. And they kept coming back, and every time they would hear these sounds. And so eventually what happened was a reporter heard a rumor. And my guess is one of them got drunk and spilled the beans in a bar or something. But a reporter got word of this. And for a long time, these hunters did not want the reporter to go up there. He did not want the reporter to go up there. He did not want them to show him where this shooting shack was. You know, because it was such a private thing.
Yeah. I get that.
But eventually he convinced them to go up there, and I guess he was up there for a few nights, and they set recording devices everywhere, and this is in the 70s. I think it was 77? Yeah, this one doesn't say. It just says the 1970s.
That's crazy.
But,
I didn't realize that was that long ago.
Yeah. But they go up there, and one night, they start making the calls. And what's crazy is that these guys actually have heard them so much that they start deciphering it's a family. You have an old one, you have the alpha male, you have a female, and you have a juvenile.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just hanging around. They would sometimes report rocks being thrown at them, but for the most part, it just sounded like they were more curious about them than anything else.
Yeah.
Being like, what are you? And the thing is with the recordings, and the news reporter said this in full disclosure too, which I think lends a little bit of credibility to it. The news reporter said the audio recordings do not do the sounds justice because it loses the sense of space. You lose the sense of space. He says the audio recordings make them sound a lot louder than what they really were.
Yeah.
And it makes them sound like they're actually closer than what they really were, which was a common problem with these sound amplifiers that they had back in the 70s. That was a common problem that you'd see. And again, this is me not saying this is 100% fact. I'm just saying that this is an interesting story that really
I get
captivated me.
where you're coming from. Totally.
And Jonathan Frakes, star of Star Trek TNG, actually did an NPR thing all about this, and it's really good to listen to if you can get over the jazz playing in the background in typical NPR fashion. But it's fascinating to listen to.
Yeah.
And terrifying.
Yeah.
But Joe Rogan kept going after the fact that the hunters were acting so calm. And it's because they've heard it before.
Yeah.
So many times. To them, it's like, yep, here they are again.
Yeah, that's like blatant leaving out crucial information about the story.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's not me going after Joe Rogan. I just think he doesn't know that information.
Yeah,
I think honestly doesn't think he knows that information.
You're totally. I think it's just a simple, like, you got the first thing from face value, but you didn't know the rest of it, which is an honest mistake.
Because if I didn't know that story, because the first time I've ever heard these sounds, I thought they were such bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, anybody can recreate those sounds if they try hard enough.
Yeah.
The thing that I kind of agree with Joe Rogan on is I do not agree with the bullshit theories that they look at the sound waves on the tape recordings and it's like, those are beyond the frequencies that humans can make. And I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. But I'll fully say it. I think they caught something. I think they were actually hearing something. The geography makes sense because it's so far away from civilization where this camp was. Plus, it's in a place where they are reported all the time. Sightings are reported all the time in this area. So it would make sense to me that they could have heard something. But the number one thing that, to me, that lends credibility to this, or there's two things in particular.
Mm-hmm.
One is that if you listen to the sound recordings, they sound like apes. Particularly, they sound like gorillas. Which is what I find the most fascinating, is that out of all the apes they could have stolen shit from, they chose a gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, it's not just one.
It's multiple.
It's multiple.
Yeah.
And that you can clearly tell which one's which. You can tell that the males sound somewhat similar, but the alpha male, you can tell which one's the alpha male, and you can tell which one's the female.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is fascinating.
Yeah, that leaves there, like, way less. There's, like, if someone's doing a bad hoax of something like that, they'll usually just reuse a sound effect or something and maybe like slightly pitch shift it. But like from what you're describing, it sounds like there's different like cadences in their voice and everything.
I'll send you the link because I'll play it for the audience on YouTube, but Lucas, you won't be able to hear it, so I'll send you the link so you can kind of play it. I'll send it to you in the Skype chat. There you go.
Yeah. Okie dokie.
But I guarantee you, Lucas, you've heard this before.
Yeah.
But let me play it for you guys. I'm gonna. Do you have it open?
Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Did I have it at 0-0?
I now have it open.
Alrighty, let's play this fucker. Let me put us both up. I'll play it in 3, 2, 1, play.
Okay.
Waiting for Nightville.
Wood knocking.
Yeah.
And you can hear people talking, mumbling.
Yeah.
And that's common. Wood knocking is common for this.
Ooh.
You trying to talk to this?
Because you can hear people talking under it.
Yeah.
These are the whoops, Ariel. Yeah. I think this is actually... See, like, that's the humans calling out to him, trying to mimic him.
Somebody actually.
Now, in this section, there's a bit of inter sounds you'll hear. You'll hear the humans mimicking them, plus the weird sounds out there. And to be honest, it's a hard time telling which one's which.
Yeah,
Some of the
yeah.
parts.
That's our job. We know where we can look for tracks and all that for sure.
But they describe it as a language.
Yeah.
They were speaking in almost language.
There's two of them across the creek at the big rocks. It's a hard act to follow.
It sounds like he talks to us and they talk to each other.
Yeah.
I think that was the reporter asking what it sounds like they're talking. That's the old man.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds like a drunken Chinese guy.
Yeah, that one to me is a little weird.
Right, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
But I'll say this: this isn't the only thing they've recorded. This thing goes on for hours.
Uh-huh.
And stuff like that, which I highly recommend people check out the entire thing, or at the very least, listen to the Jonathan Frakes NPR thing. It is on YouTube for free, where he goes into it, because despite the stupid fucking jazz music, it's a really fascinating listen.
Yeah.
And actually, I was listening to it. We were doing something at Antonio's house, and I was listening to it on the way back on the train, on the train back to my apartment. Goosebumps on the fucking thing, and I think they caught something.
I mean, yeah, they definitely caught something. There was, like, the ones that were the most, like, interesting to me were the ones that were, it sounded like the whooping, as it's described in the video.
The whooping is the thing that I believe the most.
Yeah, that's the most convincing. The one that was the least convincing was, like, the one that you said was, like, kind of like the older,
It
the
sounds
older
like an
one.
old drunken Chinese guy. That's the one that I question as well.
That's the one I question. I'm, like, a little about, but the whooping is, like, and also, regardless, they did capture something was clearly out there responding to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. But again, this is only a chunk of it. This is only a chunk of it. The parts where I particularly say they start sounding like gorillas comes later.
Okay.
Which is the part that I actually... The whooping is the most fascinating part to me, because apes whoop, but it's a great fucking listen.
Yeah.
A great fucking listen. I couldn't imagine how scared I would have been if I heard that in the middle of the fucking movie.
Oh, yeah, I would have been like shitting my pants. Like
I gotta tell you, there was one time where I heard a bobcat scream at me in the woods.
I think you've told me that. I think you've told me this one.
I just about shit my pants. That's the
Yeah.
closest I've ever been to actually shitting my pants.
It's the time period that adds a little bit for me. It's the like, they recorded this during the 70s. You said, right?
Yes, this is the 70s.
Like that's in that time period. You could not fake something as easily like that.
Well,
in audio.
here's the thing. Here's
Like,
the thing.
That's the one thing to me.
That's a
is-
double-edged sword. Because
True.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's harder to fake stuff, but it's also harder to disprove stuff.
True.
Or sorry, to prove stuff.
That's a good point.
Because
That's
if you heard the audio quality on that, it's
Yeah.
not great.
Yeah.
So that's when I get into the whole but fucking scientists, some audio engineers looked at the wavelengths, and I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's because just the audio is just so damn bad.
Yeah.